Hello, we are going to be reading the book Dear Mr. Henshaw by Beverly Clearly. I want you to flip through the book. What do you notice about how the author is writing this book? If we look, you will see that this author is writing in letter form. It has a greeting, Dear Mr. Henshaw. It has paragraphs, which is called the body, and then it also has the ending of who wrote the letter, which is the closing. What type of genre do you think that this book is? Let's flip through the book and see, and even actually look at the picture. If you said realistic fiction, you would be correct. As you see in the picture, a boy is writing a letter. Can we write letters? Yes. Another thing is that we know realistic fiction also has dialogue, which if you look on this page, you will see quotation marks, and you will see he said, even maybe she said, and that gives you a clue to the genre is realistic fiction. So before we begin, by looking at the cover, maybe looking through some of the book, not really reading it, but what do you think this book is going to be about? Have your prediction or have your guess, and we will begin to read the first page, which starts on page 1. Let's pay close attention also, please, to the dates. May 12th. Dear Mr. Henshaw, my teacher read your book about the dog to our class. It was funny. We licked it. Your friend, Lee Botts. In parentheses, it says boy. So just from this, the first page, what do you see in the writing? What you should be looking at, there is some misspelling that's going on. And if you look at licked, it probably should be what word? Liked. And then if you look at the closing, it says friend, and friend is misspelled. So just by seeing maybe how short Lee's letter is, and maybe some of the misspelling, what kind of guess could you make about how old Lee is? Make your prediction how old he is. All right, let's go to page 2. Now we went to December 3rd, so it looks like a year has passed. Dear Mr. Henshaw, I am the boy who wrote to you last year when I was in 2nd grade. Maybe you didn't get my letter. This year I read the book I wrote to you about called Ways to Amuse a Dog. It is the first thick book with chapters that I have read. The boy's father said city dogs were bored, so Joe could not keep the dog unless he could think of up 7 ways to amuse it. I have a black dog. His name is Bandit. He is a nice dog. If you answer, I get to put your letter on the bulletin board. My teacher taught me a trick about friend. The I goes before E, so that at the end it would spell end. Keep in touch, your friend, Lee Botts. All right, so on page 2, we find out that Lee is in 2nd grade. He was in 2nd grade last year, and now he is in actually 3rd grade. And he is writing, if you've noticed his writing, it's getting a little bit longer. And we are finding a little bit more about Lee. What did you find out about Lee? Well, one of the things that you should have found out that he has a dog, and his dog is named Bandit. All right, page 3. November 13th. Dear Mr. Henshaw, I'm in the 4th grade now. I made a diorama of ways to amuse a dog. The book I wrote to you about 2 times before. Now our teacher is making us write to authors for book week. I got your answer to my letter last year, but it was only printed. Please, would you write to me in your own handwriting? I am a great enjoyer of your books. My favorite character in the book was Joe's dad because he didn't get mad when Joe amused his dog by playing a tape of a lady singing, and his dog sat and howled like he was singing too. Bandit does the same thing when he hears singing. Your best reader, Lee Botts. So on page 3, there's a new year, and now he's in 4th grade. Lee is connecting to Mr. Henshaw's book, Ways to Amuse a Dog. And how does he do that? He's connecting to that book like we as readers should be connecting to a book and finding similarities between ourselves and the characters that we're reading about. And in this case, Lee is actually connecting to one of Mr. Henshaw's books because he has a dog named Bandit and does the same thing like the character in Mr. Henshaw's book. Let's flip to page 4. December 2nd. Dear Mr. Henshaw, I got to thinking about ways to amuse a dog. When Joe took his dog to the park and taught him to slide down the slide, wouldn't some grown-ups come along and say he couldn't let his dog use the slide? Around here, grown-ups who are mostly real old with cats get mad if dogs aren't on leashes every minute. I hate living in a mobile home park. I saw your picture in the back of the book. When I grow up, I want to be a famous book writer with a beard like you. I am sending you my picture. It is last year's picture. My hair is longer now. With all the millions of kids in the United States, how would you know who I am if I don't send you my picture? Your favorite reader, Lee Botts. Enclosure, picture of me. We are studying business letters. So on page 4, you see that it's still the same year, and we found something out about Lee that we haven't before. What did you find out? It's where he lives. He lives in a mobile home park. What does that mean? A mobile home park. And he says that he doesn't like it. What kind of conclusion can you draw from him living in a mobile home park? Do you think that Lee has a lot of money or he doesn't have a lot of money? Usually when people live in a mobile home park, they might not have a lot of money. So we learned that about Lee on this page. Page 5, October 2nd. Dear Mr. Henshaw, I am in 5th grade now. You might like to know that I gave a book report on ways to amuse a dog. The class liked it. I got an A-. The minus was because the teacher said I didn't stand on both feet. Sincerely, Lee Botts. So on page 5, we have learned that another year has passed, and he is in 5th grade. Let's turn to page 6. November 7th. Dear Mr. Henshaw, I got your letter and did what you said. I read a different book by you. I read Moose on Toast. I liked it almost as much as Ways to Amuse a Dog. It was really funny the way the boy's mother tried to think of ways to cook the moose meat they had in their freezer. 1,000 pounds is a lot of moose. Moose burgers, moose stew, and moose meatloaf don't sound too bad. Maybe moose mincemeat pie would be okay, because with all the raisins and junk, you wouldn't know you were eating moose. Cream chipped moose on toast? Yuck. I don't think the boy's father should have shot the moose, but I guess there are plenty of moose up there in Alaska, and maybe they needed it for food. If my dad shot a moose, I would feed the tough parts to my dog Bandit. Your #1 fan, Lee Botts. So on page 6, he has read another book by Mr. Henshaw, and as you are seeing that Mr. Henshaw has been responding to Lee. Page 7, September 20th. Dear Mr. Henshaw, this year I am in 6th grade in a new school in a different town. Our teacher is making us do author reports to improve our writing skills. So of course I thought of you. Please answer the following questions. Number 1, how many books have you written? Number 2, is Boyd Henshaw your real name or is it fake? Number 3, why do you write books for children? Number 4, where do you get your ideas? Number 5, do you have any kids? Number 6, what is your favorite book that you wrote? Number 7, do you like to write books? Number 8, what is the title of your next book? Number 9, what is your favorite animal? Number 10, please give me some tips on how to write a book. This is important to me. I really want to know so I can get to be a famous author and write books exactly like yours. Page 8. Please send me a list of your books that you wrote, an autographed picture, and a bookmark. I need your answer by next Friday. This is urgent. Sincerely, Lee Botts. Deliver, de-letter, de-sooner, de-better, de-later, de-letter, de-matter, I get her. So on page 7 and 8, we know that Lee is in 6th grade. He is asking questions for him to complete for an author report. What else did we find out about Lee? We know that he moved and he is in a new school in a different town. Can you relate to Lee at all? Have you ever experienced being maybe in a new place or a new school, or maybe even just having a new year at with a different classroom teacher? As we found out from Lee too, that he needs these questions answered by next Friday. So how do you really think that Mr. Henshaw is going to be able to respond by next Friday? Would you be able to respond by letter by next Friday to all those questions? So what would your prediction be? Would Mr. Henshaw be able to answer those questions before he has to complete his author report? Let's look at page 9, November 15th. Dear Mr. Henshaw, at first I was pretty upset when I didn't get an answer to my letter in time for my report, but I worked it out. Okay. I read what it said about you on the back of Ways to Amuse a Dog and wrote real big on every line, so I filled up the paper. On the book it said you lived in Seattle. So I didn't know you had moved to Alaska, though I should have guessed from Moose on Toast. When your letter finally came, I didn't want to read it to the class because I didn't think Miss Martinez would like silly answers like your real name is messing around and you don't have kids because you don't raise goats. She said I had to read it. The class laughed and Miss Martinez smiled, but she didn't smile when I came to the part about your favorite animal was a purple monster who ate children who sent authors long lists of questions for reports instead of learning to use the library. Page 10. Your writing tips were okay. I could tell you meant what you said. Don't worry. When I write something, I won't send it to you. I understand how busy you are with your own books. I hid the second page of your letter from Miss Martinez. That list of questions you sent for me to answer really made me mad. Nobody else's author put any list of questions to be answered, and I don't think it's fair to make me do more work when I already wrote a report. Anyway, thank you for answering my questions. Some kids didn't get any answers at all, which made them mad, and one girl almost cried. She was so afraid she would get a bad grade. One boy got a letter from an author who sounded real excited about getting a letter and wrote such a long answer the boy had to write a long report. He guessed nobody ever wrote to that author before, and he sure wouldn't again. About 10 kids wrote to the same author, who wrote one answer to all of them. There was a big argument about who got to keep it until Miss Martinez took the letter to the office and duplicated it. About those questions you sent me, I'm not going to answer them, and you can't make me. You're not my teacher. Yours truly, Lee Botts. P.S. When I asked you what the title of your next book was going to be, you said, "Who knows?" Did you mean that was the title, or you don't know what the title will be? And do you really write books because you have read every book in the library and because writing beats mowing the lawn or shoveling snow? So on page 9, 10, and 11, Mr. Henshaw did reply, but it was not on time. His answers were kind of funny, and the only answer that he gave that wasn't so funny to Miss Martinez was about the purple monster who ate children who sent authors long lists of questions for reports instead of learning to use the library. Why was Lee so mad at Mr. Henshaw? Well, Mr. Henshaw wanted Lee to answer a bunch of questions, and Lee didn't want to. He voiced his opinion, and do you think that Lee should answer his questions? Why do you think that? And why do you think that really Lee is so mad about answering those questions? Would you be mad about answering questions?